And then there's like very high signal feedback that you can get. So how do we make sure that all of that is filtered out so it's going to recall the relevant information, and then it's also going to give you the level of severity and only these very high signal feedback? Because if not, honestly, it would just be annoying. If you're just getting any and all nitpicks, I wouldn't even want to work with a developer who is like that with code review. So why would I want to introduce a tool or a technology that's going to do the same thing to me?
Yeah. Hi, friends. I'm Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hansel Minutes. Today, I'm chatting with Nnenna Ndukwe. She's an AI developer relations lead at Codo, and she's blown up on Twitter. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for hanging out. I've been really enjoying your little snackable videos that you do, and you do them mostly on Twitter, but do you do YouTube as well? I mean, how many social media networks are you on right now?
I know right now it's Twitter and LinkedIn, but I'm slowly starting to get into YouTube. Expect a lot more of that this year, 2026.
Mm-hmm. So right now you're a developer relations lead at Codo, but you have to be an engineer to talk to engineers. How did you start your engineering journey?
First of all, I love that you pointed that out. I think that's super important for DevRel work. I started maybe 9-10 years ago as a software developer, and believe it or not, I got in through teaching myself. I think that the times back then of like free tools online like Codecademy and Free Code Camp. I was working as a tanning consultant in Houston, and in my free time, I would just go through these free tutorials. And then I realized like, oh, this is an actual career. And this is super interesting, solving problems through code. And that's when I moved to Boston and really fully immersed myself in the tech space and eventually got a role. And that was all before I ended up studying computer science at Boston University. So been doing full stack software engineering for all of my career before transitioning into DevRel and AI specifically.
Yeah. One of the things that I think you may not realize, but I think we are kindred spirits in, is that we both started at community college. And I started in community college. It took me 11 years while working at night to finish my 4-year degree. So I was working in the lab, maintaining computers at Portland Community College, got a job, was working full time, but still doing kind of night classes and grinding through stuff. So even though you've been doing this for a decade plus, you still continued your education.
Yeah, it was very difficult to balance both of those, but I think that I'm glad that initially I had the interest, like this relentless curiosity to understand what coding and software development was. And then having these computer, science courses that I could take at community colleges was an amazing entry point, a bit more structure in how I could learn, and getting that expertise from professors and getting mentorship and all of that was an awesome combination. But it was definitely a pretty difficult thing to balance once I was working full time and going to school full time.
Yeah, yeah. I was reflecting on, I mean, I've been out of school a little longer than you, but all the languages that I learned in school are dead. So I feel like I really, C, like C is not dead, but it was like C and Windows 3.1 and, DOS, Turbo Pascal, stuff like that. What did you learn in school and when you were self-teaching? Because then you did work you're kind of non-denominational. You do Python, you do React, JavaScript, TypeScript, and everything. But I'm curious what you learned in school versus reality versus what you're doing now. Is there a straight line or is it a curvy line?
In school, I actually remember one of the first it was Visual Basic.
Yes.
Yeah, I knew you were going to be happy with that.
That's my jam. Like everybody, like so many people in my generation are like, Visual Basic got us started because it was the first like accessible, like you can just do stuff language. Like the feeling that people are feeling about AI, which is the you can just do stuff. We felt like that about Visual Basic.
Literally, it was first time being exposed to that, and I felt like pretty powerful, I would say. And then the other, I think at Boston University, the big focus was Java for sure. And I have mixed feelings, I guess, about it. I don't know if I should say that out loud, but
I know because we probably have like Java friends. We don't want to offend our Java friends. We'll appreciate that.
Amazing, talented Java friends, like my colleague, principal architect, Java guy, 30 years. So but But still, I think I was comparing it to the ease of use I felt with JavaScript, or I guess how easy it was to get started. When you know nothing, JavaScript felt a bit more friendly than Java when I was learning it in university.
Yeah. I think it's also worth noting, and I think our Java friends would probably agree with us, that Java as taught in university is not the same as like Java in the enterprise. And there's a bit of a distance there.
Oh, I would like to hear more about that, your opinions on that.
Well, I just feel like the stuff that I learned was always 4 years behind. And it's just like Java beans and like Java for hello world versus like running a large enterprise that needs to scale. I feel like one of the number one missing things in school is scaling stuff. Everything you make in school, as a general rule, is largely a toy, particularly at kind of mid level schools and community colleges. You're making stuff for yourself. It's not until you get to like fancier schools, and I'm curious if you saw this at Boston University, where you start doing group projects and making something big and scalable.
Yeah, group projects definitely made things a bit more, I guess you had to grow up in a way with a more complex problem solving and collaboration, really, with projects. But yeah, I can see what you mean about the difference there. A lot of like isolated small projects when you're, in your own world building for yourself. And it's a completely different ballgame with large companies. And, I feel the same way when it comes to the startups, working in a very small startup developer team versus thinking for a larger machine at a larger company with a bigger product brings in millions a year. And the how careful you have to be in the processes put in place to make sure your shipping quality is a I think that is different, and it makes sense why it would be.
Yeah. Now, when we start doing group projects, and I try to explain this to the young men in my life, my sons 18 and 20, that life is just a big group project, except you don't always get to pick the people on the project. And sometimes that one guy or gal who doesn't do anything, but they come to all the meetings and they just kind of hang out, and then they also get an A. Like that happens a lot. That kind of sucks. Did they teach you that in school, or did you just learn that later in life?
You know, I I was one of those people who, if I noticed there was someone slacking, I was like, there's no way I'm going to let them negatively impact the overall grade, right? So I would definitely do a lot of their own work. Maybe that's not a good team player, but if I knew that there was no way they were going to do it and they wouldn't have done it anyway,
Yeah.
I'm taking on that work.
I've done a number of podcasts about code reviews, and I feel like code reviews get people tense. It's a moment in a group project where you have to actually look at people's work. And typically, code reviews, when I was coming up, were done in a room full of people in front of a whiteboard, and we would share our screen, and we would like, "What were you thinking, Naina, when you did that line of code? Like, what was wrong with you when you wrote line 55?" And it was very personal. But now it's a little bit more like on GitHub or in GitOps and like that. What has been your experience through group projects up through the pre-Git era and now Git code reviews and distributed code reviews, and how it makes you feel?
I distinctly remember similar experience. I don't think a whiteboard was involved, but a big screen sharing for earlier on in my development career, and the code review right there in one room, everyone looking and skimming through it. Those were some brutal moments. I'm not going to lie. I think maybe a lot of things have changed since then. So there's some detachment, I think, that you're able to have when, with the remote work and comments just being on GitHub instead of everyone being in a room talking about how questionable your code may or may not be. But the personalities can still be strong and show up in those comments in GitHub. So it really depends on like who you're working with and what their style is, their preference, and what everyone cares about. So that's something that I think that now with AI code review, there's this third party that is playing a part in the experience that, interestingly, I'm seeing some developers are actually, I guess they prefer to maybe argue with the AI as opposed to, and maybe fix their work with AI before another person, another professional has to come in and review their work. Ideally, before a pull request is even live and public. But if it has to, if it's already public, then there's some fixing up that they can do before their
Yeah.
colleague jumps in.
I remember in the move from being in school to being like on a small company to being in a big company, it's kind of like when you wrote a paper for English and then it gets returned covered in red ink, and then you have to just go and, but that was very like personal, and it felt very opinionated because I would be reading what my English teacher would think about my essay, and I'd be like, well, I mean, it says you, like you're more senior and you're fancy, but like spelling errors, yes, but like thematically, no, this is good thematically. Code reviews also felt a little like personal, and it's just like, duh. But I kind of find that with AI code reviews, at least the ones that I do before I put the PR up, it's like, no, we're really just focused on correctness. And I kind of like that. It feels more like less personal. It's more about, and I'm saying spelling in quotes because it's like the AI doesn't have a beef with me that they're like actively trying to destroy me at work because they didn't like me. They just want to make sure the code is correct.
Right. There's so some of the negative, it sounds like what you're saying and what we're both saying, some of the, I guess, the downsides of the human collaboration aspect of things, the variability there gets softened a bit in that experience with AI. And it can also be a learning tool too for juniors coming up, depending on, the type of developer experience that the code review can provide and the way in which you engage with it. Those are other elements there. But the way juniors can potentially learn from a code review experience and the ways that a senior developer maybe can learn how to engage or which things to focus on based on the insights from a code review that an AI tool can highlight.
Yeah. Like I do not want AIs to like hurt people or replace people, but I do like the extra step between, like I like the AI code review right before the human like looks at it. And I noticed though that it's all about context, and I don't mean necessarily AI context. I mean like, why was this done this way? Well, there's an old person who works here who wrote it 20 years ago, and it was a good idea back then. Like that's context, and I don't know if that fits in a context window. And when the bigger the code base, the more complex the code base, a lot of context gets missed. So you'll have blinders on, and you'll have like a very narrow window in your mind about like that line of code sucks. And it's like, well, actually, if you knew about the bigger context, you'd understand why that's exactly what needs to happen right now.
Exactly. Yeah, I think there's that impacts, or I guess having that proper context, no pun intended in my case and yours, definitely helps to shape the decisions that are made in the present time over why something is built and the way in which it was built. It should, if it should exist at all. And yeah, I think in the AI specific context, I think that there is a really big push and a need for all of that type of information that could be tribal knowledge or only the person who's been at this company x amount of years and had been in the room during some of those conversations, that's information that they would know, that influences the way in which a piece of software or product is built. I think we're really pushing to codify that information, make it machine readable. It's like, where does it exist? How can we collect that in a way that AI can consume it and traverse it, ingest it often in order to influence what is even suggested for code changes or improvement or validated.
Mm-hmm. Now, in your day job, you work at a company called Codo. It's Qodo, and they have a code review product, and they've got Codo 2.0 coming out. And it's a very crowded space, right? And I think the question is a code review from an AI good? And what's the secret sauce? Because for some people who are listening, they may have just copy pasted code in ChatGPT and said, "Hey, is this good?" Or they may go into Claude Code or GitHub Copilot and go /review. But like now, there's context engineering, there's complicated multi-level, multi-agent code reviews.
Right.
Do you think code review is something that's going to be commoditized and we just like, it's not that big of a deal, just use this one? or do you think that there's secret sauce that companies like Codo can provide to make it something special?
I think there is a secret sauce. I mean, just being in the weeds and learning so much from the R&D team here, diving more into like what are the qualities or the components of a good AI code review. I think I've realized that there is a secret sauce. There are many secret sauces. Context was one of the things that we brought up, that I think can empower or influence like best practices and architectural decisions and entire code bases and how they all work together. That can influence the value of the insights that you get from a code review. But context is extremely important and can be a differentiator, I think, in this space. But also there's another element there, and that's just the benchmarking around highest precision, highest recall, and constantly improving in that area in a very specialized manner. I think that is what can help with, okay, there's a lot of code review tools out there, but there are some that produce a lot of noise where
Mm-hmm.
it's just going to call out everything and anything that based on the code that you give it or the diff that it reads through Git. And then there's like very high signal feedback that you can get. So how do we make sure that all of that is filtered out so it's going to recall the relevant information, and then it's also going to give you the level of severity and only these very high signal feedback? Because if not, honestly, it would just be annoying. If you're
Mm,
just getting any and all nitpicks, I wouldn't even want to work with a developer who is like that with code review. So why would I want to, introduce a tool or a technology that's going to do the same thing to me?
yeah.
So I think
You did a blog post a couple of months ago on contextual retrieval and kind of like how that's different from just like RAG or just like the code is not telling the full story, which I thought was really interesting. If someone says, I'm going to do a code review and here's the file or here's the new interface that we're going to do a code review on, there's the code, but there might be like a whole conversation that happened over in an issue somewhere. There's a whole design document. There's like Slack messages. Context is spread all over
yeah.
the company.
Yeah, it is. And then there's also like best practices in general that I think is spread out in different areas. It could be through some comments that you might find in some GitHub issues or comments from past PRs of like, we don't do this that way. Here's the actual way that we implement it. So if you think about all the different types of context that you can find and all the different places that they might exist, the work around converging that into maybe some central plane that can fuel AI code review tools. Like I think that not only is going to isn't it's not only going to help with the experience of using it on a daily basis of like, okay, this is actually more valuable information. I think that that's when you can get into like some proactive, real, of what I consider real AI. It's like very proactive developer experiences.
Yeah, because there's like people say, "Well, just give it a giant context window, throw everything at it. Like, give here I have a million tokens, throw it all into the pile." But the AI reasoning layer can only do so much, and they call it a what's the word? The needle in the haystack problem. And the thing that I think is interesting from your blog post is that there's a context gathering layer that happens well before the AI gets to think about it, because garbage in, garbage out, right?
Right, right. There's a few things going on there. And one of those things is like, if you're worried about the context window, it's like there is an engine running. And I think about it like a cron job, right? Where it's just ingesting information on a nightly basis, like a build. And that is supposed to help with essentially, you don't have to worry about retrieving all of that information in real time. This is information that is baked and ready to be recalled already. And that engine is running on itself. And you can also determine what actually goes into that engine to fuel or improve the AI itself.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of things going on there that is beyond RAG, I would say, or what people are calling more agentic RAG.
Mm.
If you get deeper into the different like AI architectural patterns that seem to be more successful now, I guess, with the more that
Yeah.
testing and building things, it changes.
Yeah, it is. Being able to do like search has always sucked, and I remember, like again, I'm of a certain age, so I remember when you had to search for something, you had to use proper case, like capital letters mattered, and then we got case insensitive searches, and then we got fuzzy searches, and now we have AI searches where I can say, "What was that thing I was talking to Naina about? I think it was last week on Slack. Could have been the week before. We were talking about design." Like you can give long, yappy, like, what was that thing with that person, with that guy? He was in this movie with this, and it'll know. And it's like, that's where augmentation feels cool. Like, that's like, wow, now I have like an exoskeleton for my own brain. So if that context gathering for like a code base gets not just like a commit history, which is basic, but like test coverage, conversations, discussions about the feature, a document that was from design from a year ago, and then give the right amount of context, you can answer those super vague questions.
It's honestly, I feel the same way as you. I'm still blown away that I can search something, and it will, an AI search tool can bring up the most relevant or closely matching information
Mm-hmm.
without me even using the direct or the exact keywords that match what I was talking about, that semantic layer.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's absolutely fascinating, but that is the present, and I think it's the future of really what real AI is, it could be and is intended to be
Mm-hmm.
for users, everyday users.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, why did you join a code review company? Was it exciting to like get in this space because you're in the thick of it. I watch you doing videos basically every single day talking about how you can make people's lives better, and it's a really advanced system. I've been going through the Codo documentation and learning about all the different contexts. I was just thinking about context generally, but there's the semantic context, there's the temporal context, context over time, there's the architectural context. And the bigger the code base, the more this matters because your code base is very likely much larger than your context window.
Exactly. There's something about AI for the software development lifecycle that it, how do I say this, has me in a chokehold. That's the
Hmm.
best way to put it. I'm so fascinated by the way to structured ways to integrate AI into the software developers' experience to improve their workflow, to improve the quality, or even maintain the quality that they want to maintain with their software, being able to ship it and just maybe do it a bit faster.
Yeah.
That is just, there are so many, as we know, when you look at the entire life cycle, there are many stages. And so that means that there are many opportunities to peel back the layers, get into the weeds, and find out where are the wins here for workflows with AI where you can improve it. And so that's, ultimately what drew me to Codo, is that not only is it a tool that is meant to enable developers for that, but also I think there's so much more to be said about practical implementations. This is not about like, oh, AI for software development, like this is a thing that you need to be doing. We hear this message all the time. And when I speak with engineering managers and when I, have talks and things like that, they're like, that's awesome. Yes, we should be using AI. How do you actually roll this out? How do you actually adopt this? And those are the real important questions, I think. So, exposure to tools is awesome, but being able to walk through how you can actually use it, from an individual to an entire engineering organization,
Mhm.
that is so exciting to me.
No, I see a lot of code review tools that are around GitHub, and I hear everyone's talking about, GitHub. It's very GitHub centric. It's very GitLab centric. It's all the Git places. But you also work in Azure DevOps, which I thought was pretty cool. That you've got like code quality, security reviews all in ASDO. And people don't maybe don't know this. I don't talk about it enough, but like most of my main sites all run in Azure DevOps. Like
Oh,
I freaking, yeah, like Handsome, like this podcast deploys and runs and is managed out of DevOps.
oh, I love to hear it. Yeah, this was the more that we spoke with engineers and engineering leaders about Azure DevOps, the more it was like, wait, this is a missed opportunity. It's like these are folks at large enterprises that need the type of support to leverage AI tools the same way others can on different infrastructure. Why can't they be supported too?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the engineers here at Codo just got to work. And it was some months long, I think, of being able to build that out to make sure that you get the same experience if you were on GitHub that you are on Azure, and it was worth it. Really excited about that because like we said, it's one thing to work in isolation on the easiest to access tools or most tools that people are using.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you're on the job and these particular tools or something else is what you use? Well, we want to be able to support
Yeah.
that.
Now I know we mentioned Twitter, and there's aspects of Twitter that are just an absolute dumpster fire. I see you on LinkedIn as well, and I also see you not just talking about AI tools on Twitter, but also talking about like AI companies that they're built for business incentives. They have really high evaluations. Like it's not the AI that's dangerous; it's like the person holding the AI and
Yeah.
pounding you on the head with it. How do you find those kind of takes on Twitter when everyone is so, for lack of a better word, like crypto bro about their excitement around about AI?
It's like, I try to be as balanced and as pragmatic about this as possible. Like I I'm so excited about the positive potential
Mm-hmm.
of what AI can do for society. And I'm also very well aware that there is nothing new under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And humans are terribly predictable and like on a much higher level, in a macro uh, level.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that when you have a tool, which is AI, just a tool, you can choose to leverage that for good or
Mm-hmm.
leverage that for bad. So I never ever want to dismiss the power of people leveraging things that would leveraging a tool for bad for society.
Yeah, I mean it is a power tool, right? And you can take a chainsaw and you can chop down trees and you can chop down people, and you have to treat these things with the respect, and you need to know which is the pointy end
Hmm.
of the tool so that people don't get hurt. It is challenging and sometimes helpless feeling that it's like, hey, I can show you how things can be better if you use this tool. Like I'm off, quote unquote, selling my things in my day job and talking about Copilot CLI and all these
Yeah,
different cool models like Opus and stuff like that. But I'm also acknowledging that people like are afraid. And it's like, I don't want anyone to lose their job. I want people to be excited about how this will make your job suck less. And you can
right,
do stuff you couldn't do before, you know?
right. There's a general fear, I think, with not just developers, but so many folks about is this going to be a tool that replaces me? And what I want, my personal mindset really is that because I am really interested in emerging technology, and because I like to be forward thinking about where do I see myself in 2 years or in 5 years, I'm constantly thinking about how can I make sure I'm getting ahead of things. And what I would love to see is more folks start to do that like self audit. If
Mm,
there is fear, you can actually transform that energy of fear to figure out, well, how do I want to get ahead by educating myself or empowering myself or considering a couple different career trajectories. Yeah, and that's not the best, or I guess the most positive answer, but it is a way to empower yourself thinking
yeah.
through.
Yeah, it is challenging because you have to contextualize how you exist in this time and what you do to fight against the things that suck, but also to promote the things that don't suck.
Right, right.
Yeah. Well,
Do you
thank
feel
you.
like you're doing a great job of that with the work that you do and you know,
I always say that I want to, if I work at a company, the company may not be perfect, but at least it'll be better that I'm there than if I wasn't there. And while the bigger the company, the more likely that that company does something dumb or problematic. But at the same time, I can influence things and be a lever for positivity and change on the inside versus the out. And then, when it doesn't work anymore, I'll go and I'll teach high school science.
I love that. Absolutely love that was like a perfect conclusive uh, I guess wisdom nugget right there.
Well, that's very kind. The show was about you, but I appreciate the compliment. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Folks can check out Qodo, QODO.ai. You can have AI powered code reviews with the #1 AI code review agent. This is not a sponsored show. This is just a really cool exploration with Naina and the work that she and the folks over at Codo are doing. So check it out. And you can check her out on everywhere that social media exists. Thank you so much, Nnenna Ndukwe, for hanging out with me today.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes, and we'll see you again next week.